So what is the okay? You took 5.0. I take 5.6 here, sir.
That is very good, right?
So, but we can't use class for the event. What is the but does it have restricted use of plaster during normal
It's not dark. It's light going. Turning up.
So it is
Don't we'll get on. Give me one chair. Anybody. Give me one chair. Thank you. Just text with the attendance. Thank you.
Zoom. ಓಕೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಫ್ರೇಮಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸರ್ವಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಯಾಕೆ ಇದು ಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಸೈಡ್ ಬೇಡ ಅಂತ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಬೇಡ ಗೊತ್ತೇ ನಾವು ಕೆಲಸ ನೋಡಿ ಇದು ಎಂಟಿ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಬರ್ತದೆ ನಿಮ್ ರೈಟ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಈ ಫ್ರೇಮೇ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅದಿರ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಈಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಬ್ಯಾಕಪ್ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬಟ್ ಅಷ್ಟು ಬರುತ್ತಾ ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಬ್ಯಾಕಪ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ ಮೆಮೊರಿ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಎರಡಿದೆಯಾ ಬಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸದ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿ ಬಿಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಆಗ್ತದಲ್ಲ wanted a backup everything is ಏನಾಯ್ತು ಸೆಂದಿಲ್ ಸೆಂದಿಲ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಚಳಿ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಪೈಸೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ
Dear participants and attendees, we are about to begin. Kindly be seated. Please keep your mobile in the silent mode, and we solicit your kind cooperation and attention. Good morning, dear participants and attendees. I, Shilpi Agarwal, on behalf of the Conference Organizing Committee of Center for Management Studies, Jane deemed to be University, extend a very warm welcome to all our esteemed dignitaries, academicians, researchers, corporate delegates, scholars, students, and each one of you present here today. It is indeed a pleasure and privilege to be here this morning for two-day international conference on innovative practices for sustainable development, business management, and analytics in collaboration with the Institute of Analytics and Erasmus+. The Institute of Analytics is the UK-based professional body for analytics and data science professionals worldwide. And Erasmus Plus is a program that is run by the European Union, which focuses on 4 fields that are education, training, youth, and sports to improve skills and increase employability. The conference also aims to create a unified platform for sustainable development in research, practice, and education. It will also reiterate the idea of employing business analytics to make data-driven informed decisions and discuss technology adoption trends associated with it. I believe this conference will be an enriching educational and networking experience for all and will bring forth several informative presentations. I wish you a very fruitful, productive, and engaging day ahead. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Raj Singh, Dr. Harold Patrick Dreenan, Professor of Academics, CMS Business School, Jane deemed to be University, and Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, Director and Professor of Strategy, IIM Bangalore. Welcome, sir. Prayer is the best armor against all odds. It is the key to God's heart. It is a way of connecting with the Almighty. It is through prayer the impossible becomes possible. Before we start, let us seek the blessing of the Almighty. I request Ms. Baisakhi to lead us in prayer and the gathering to rise for the same. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Shano Mitra Shamvarunaha Shano Bhavatvaryaman Shanna Indro Brahaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayu Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Hridam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmam Avatu Tad Bhaktaram Avatu Avatu Mam Avatu Bhaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Ms. Vaisakhi. A candle loses nothing by lighting other candle. All it does is spread its light and existence. Let us mark this special occasion by lighting the lamp. I request the dignitaries to light the lamp.
It is tilted. I'm setting it. Is it better now?
Thank you, dignitaries.
Now? Is it better?
Dear participants and attendees, I take the privilege of introducing Dr. Harold Andrew Patrick, Professor and Dean of Academics, CMS Business School, Chain deemed to be University. Dr. Patrick is a qualified industrial and organizational psychologist with over 3 decades of postgraduate teaching, corporate training, and research experience. He is a member of the Academic Council for several institutes and universities in Bangalore. He has published over 100+ articles in refereed and peer-reviewed national and international journals and several books, best paper awards at international conferences. He is the resource person for many training programs for corporate and crafted individual training modules for HAL, ABB, GMR, BPCL, HP, Infosys, and many small and medium-scale organizations for entry, junior, and mid-level managers on personal and interpersonal effectiveness, leadership, team building, conflict management, mentoring, motivation and commitment, communication skills, effective presentation skills, self-awareness, and other tailor-made modules, both for corporate clients and academic institutions. His pedagogical techniques are based on research using diagnostic tools and psychometric instruments, videos, case studies, and introspective learning. His interest lies in human behavior and its application at the workplace, and has trained extensively in these areas, working closely with managers, faculty members, Christian leaders, educational leaders, business graduates, and working students. He is also an elected member of the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, USA. With utmost respect and honor, I call upon Dr. Harold Patrick to deliver the welcome address.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2-day international conference. In the era of globalization, organizations need to gain competitive advantage. And that could only happen by embracing transformation through innovative, sustainable practices and analytics. Organizations today not only need to economically be viable to the sustainable use of resources, but also socially responsible to stakeholders in more visible and transparent ways. Organizations that design and implement socially responsible and environment-centric goals and analytics as core strategy are uniquely placed in the global market, enabling the businesses to achieve its goals. Such businesses realign their key assets, such as people, technology, and analytics to lead innovation and change. Innovative, sustainable practices crafted by organizations serve to maximize opportunities for meaningful and inclusive participation by stakeholders, communities, even while minimizing the adverse impact of the core operations on the environment, economy, and future development. The 2-day International Conference on Innovative Practices for Sustainable Development, Business Management and Analytics will bring together the best talent in academia and industry who will come together to discuss, dialogue, debate the current practices. Experts from both academia and industry will present their practices that has worked and lessons learned from failures in the entrepreneurship, business management, education, finance domains, and showcase the power of analytics in increasing efficiency at the workplace, which will help in generating newness of knowledge while complementing existing paradigms and frameworks that focus on the areas of transformation through innovation and sustainability. It is my privilege and honor this morning on behalf of the management of the Jain deemed to be university to extend a warm welcome to the people who make this inaugural ceremony a momentous and eventful one. Our Honorable Chancellor and Chairman, Dr. Chenraj Roychan, who visionary and champion, who champions the cause of job creation through entrepreneurship. We welcome you, sir. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Raj, Transdisciplinary Education. We welcome you, sir. Our beloved reminds us that performance is reality. We welcome him online. Our chief guest for this August ceremony, Professor Hrishikesh T. Krishnan, Director and Professor of Strategy at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, a seasoned expert in strategy, an erudite scholar, an institution builder, and a genuine contributor to education. So we welcome you. Our keynote speakers for this inaugural ceremony, Dr. Amitabh Anand, Associate Professor of Excelia Business School in La Rochelle, France, Professor Mario Huck, Professor in Chief in the Ministry of Croatia. We welcome them too. It is with pride I welcome the convener of this conference, Dr. Sachin K. Parappa Gowder, esteemed principal officers of the Jain deemed to be university, faculty colleagues, all the participants from the academia and the industry who are here for the international conference, both physically and virtually, research scholars and students who are presenting their ideas and work, we welcome you. The stage is set for an objective look at this relevant and contemporary theme by experts, scholars, corporate and participants internationally and nationally from a spectrum of industries as well as professions. They will deliberate and provide a kaleidoscope of perspectives to act and respond to the theme of the conference. I hope at the end of the 2 days, there will be new learnings, insights, and an action plan that will evolve in the direction of being fully accepted by the patrons and the stakeholders in the environment. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, sir, for encapsulating the true meaning of sustainable development using innovative techniques in businesses and organizations. Thank you for your presence, sir. It means a lot. Thank you. Dear participants and attendees, it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome the Vice Chancellor of Jain deemed to be University, Dr. Raj Singh. Dr. Singh has 40 years of experience, including 27 years in education. He has been the Vice Chancellor of many prestigious universities across India. He is a consultant, trainer, astute academic, administrator, teacher, speaker, and education entrepreneur. He is known for his oratory skills and innovative approach in higher education and is also a TEDx speaker. A strong protagonist of outcome-based inter- and transdisciplinary education and research. He has been instrumental in designing innovative pathways in collaboration with several international universities like University of Warwick, University of California, Arkansas, Clemson, Purdue, Oklahoma, Eastern Michigan, and many more. Dr. Singh has published and presented many research papers and delivered keynote addresses in over 80 conferences and has been a panelist in many TV shows. Featured as one of the movers and shakers on the Daily World Post and My Icon on FM channel 2016 and 17. He represented India at the International Design Summit held in Milan in 2013. He is widely traveled, a visiting professor, and on the advisory boards of many prestigious institutions and universities. He regularly chairs the expert committees of the National Board of Accreditation, NBA. He has been conferred awards for his exemplary education leadership in 2012, 16, and 17, and also was conferred with Peter Drucker Memorial Award in 2020. He has developed a unique transdisciplinary project-centric learning at Jain, which will take the education to the intersection of research and practice in the coming years. Without further ado, with immense respect and gratitude, I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Raj Singh, to deliver inaugural address.
Our distinguished chief guest this morning, Dr. Krishnan, I'm Bangalore Director, Dr. Harold Patrick, Sachin and the team, faculty members, keynote speakers, session chairs, delegates, scholars, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I welcome our honorable chief guest this morning for sparing time and being with us. I think his presence will attach greater credibility to our efforts and make it more memorable than it would have been without him. Thank you so much for making it so. I thank Dr. Dinesh and the team for having me this morning for the inaugural session. And I congratulate the team for organizing this conference on a very, very relevant topic. In fact, I won't be wrong if I say that whether in business or education, keywords these days are innovation, sustainability, analytics, and of course, technology. And all have been beautifully captured in the conference title. When I talk about these technologies which work towards sustainability, could be related to carbon capture and storage systems. They could relate to efficient irrigation methods for the field of agriculture. It could be essential medicines, or it could be household water purification systems, and of course, minimizing the waste and pollution. I remember in the 1990s, when I was a student of finance and under stock market courses, we used to often read a statement, gold. I think I never thought that it would become so important 30 years later, what it is today. Another very important book we used to offer, refer in our management courses was, I think, 1996 classic of Matthew J. Kiernan, which said, get innovative or get dead. And that he beautifully said that tomorrow's wars will not be fought with yesterday's strategies and day before yesterday's weaponry. We need to reinvent them continuously if we have to remain relevant. And these statements are proving to be so correct in today's context. It was further institutionalized and a vision was given to the entire world when in September 2015, the United Nations adopted 17 strategic development goals. And the whole country, the efforts, the resources, research, and other initiatives have been directed towards achievement of these 17 goals. More than 190 countries had adopted them. Recently, I read a very interesting paper by Jayant K. Sinha and others, in which, if I talk just one aspect of sustainability, and that is green business, green initiatives. And in the paper, they beautifully articulate that as we move from agriculture to manufacturing to green frontier industries, this will have to be accompanied by market sophistication and skill enhancement of the people. And once these two increase, we'll move from agriculture to a green frontier industry, and more businesses will be following that. But at the same time, some of the statistics cost for these kind of around $90 billion to $120 billion. It's yet to be seen how we mobilize these resources, but it requires two things for a country like India to follow if we have to be on the green frontier. And the first one is that we need to become competitive in many industries, key industries. And competitive means we have to be cost competitive, we have to be competitive through differentiation. And the second one is, of course, is to adopt a resource centric low carbon management approach. Now, sometimes they may be seemingly concurrently, but one thing is for sure that the world has realized that if we have to achieve the sustainable development goals, India has to be part of this, which means India has to go green. There's absolutely no other alternative because this is the role India has to play. Another report which said that there are 8 industries, 5 industries which cover about 80% of the emissions which pollute, which are known as the greenhouse gas emissions. And if you can control these 5 industries, which are mainly power, residential, transportation, industrial, and agriculture, it's like low-hanging fruits. If we can work in these 5 industries, we would be moving very, very close to our objectives. As you must be aware that India has achieved many of these goals much before the deadline was set, which is 2030. According initiatives are far less than what they should have been. And that's where the importance of these kind of conferences comes. The investment, the initiatives from the policymakers, the initiatives from educational institutions, all have to come together to innovate, and tomorrow has been shaped largely by these kind of global initiatives like Strategic Development Goals of 2030. Also, we need to remember that each one of us will have to focus on these 3 types of a student premise that in one of the areas of Haryana where I used to work earlier, and Haryana is dubbed as, though I don't agree with this, being my home state, is male-dominated society. And gender equality is one of the strategic development goals, is because of the male dominance in the society of Haryana. And the students went with the hypothesis that we need to find out what percentage of men and women support this idea. And to the utter surprise, what happened was every male member in the family loved a girl child. It was the women who wanted a son. And the hypothesis they went with was completely proven wrong. And therefore, the beauty of data-based decision-making is something which can challenge age-old ideologies. This kind of conflict is also being faced, and we have to resolve it on a daily basis. We cannot find solutions to the problems of the society by just studying one single discipline. And therefore, inter and transdisciplinary approach is suggested. To give an example, if you look at the demographics, by 2050 or so, the number of people above the age of 100 will be crossing 200,000 in the world. The number of people between 65 to 100 years of age, senior citizens, as you call them, would be anywhere around 2.5 billion people. Now, are we preparing our society to support that kind of aging population? We need to pause and think, because the people today will be the policymakers, will be the ones who will find innovative solutions, products, and services for the aging society. And this can happen only from a multidisciplinary approach. No single discipline can solve this. Of course, technology will be a great enabler. Financial resources will have to be mobilized for all these initiatives and innovations. And it is because of this reason, national education policy emphasizes that the research has to be extended beyond academic research. It has to be more applied research. And this can happen only through innovations that the knowledge created through research can be converted back into money. And the cycle has to be completed. And therefore, the role of innovation has been emphasized. It requires policy interventions and institutional support. Whatever the political consequences have been, but I must confess, being a student of economics and finance, three initiatives of the government of India, whether in the past or in present, will take this country into the future. And that's what makes the future bright as far as this nation is concerned. And number one is digitization process. Two, Jan Dhan Yojana, when it brought millions of people into the banking system, and we have seen the evidence during the COVID that whatever help we wanted to give to the people, even if it was 500 rupees reached the account without a single penny less. It is the same country where the Prime Minister used to say that only 15 paise reached the needy person out of 1 rupee granted in terms of help. This is what the magic of this digitization process and bringing more and more people into the banking system has done. And of course, third one is your unique identity, or Aadhaar card, as you call it. It was started by the previous government, taken forward by the current government. It's a very, very potent tool for, if not eliminating, at least significantly reducing the corruption and other issues. And of course, in terms of delivering services. And finally, data-driven decision-making, which I referred to earlier. Just one example, I was reading a very detailed analysis of the patents filed in the last few years in the country, and then compared with what has been the global status. Depending on which industry, which areas, more patents have been filed, that show that research is being undertaken in those areas. Are they aligned with certain specific strategy development goals or not? If not, that shows the scope of other research. If yes, that shows what progress we have really made. This kind of analysis of research and other initiatives, whether it is financial investment or budget allocation in different areas, can tell us that in what direction we're moving and how much it is being percolating down to the industries and the individual level. I think these are some of the issues and many more will be deliberated during the conference by various researchers and speakers. I was seeing the lineup. It's a very, very powerful line of speakers and session chairs and technical paper presentations. I congratulate once again the organizing team for putting this conference together. I can just imagine what efforts it takes to put in place this kind of conference. Congratulations to faculty and particularly the students who have been supporting them actively. I wish the conference great success. I'm sure much more will be added in terms of clarity to the concept as well as the existing body of knowledge. Thank you and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for reiterating the importance of innovation, sustainability, technology, and research. You rightly said that these conferences and initiatives will definitely help India to achieve the goal of go green. Multidisciplinary approach should also be implemented in academics to enhance research. Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights. Your presence means a lot. Thank you, sir. Now I would request our conference convener, Dr. Sachin, to give the opening remarks and brief us about the conference.
Good morning, sir. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent, but the one with most response to the change will survive, according to Charles Darwin. So, Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Rishikesha, sir, respected Vice Chancellor, Dr. Raj Singh, sir, our beloved Dean Harold Patrick, sir. I, Dr. Sachin Parapagoda, convener of two-day international conference on innovative practices for sustainable development, business management and analytics, in collaboration with Indian Institute of Analytics and also Erasmus Plus. It's a pleasure to welcome you all. Very good morning to one and all present here. And thank you for joining us both virtually as well as offline. It's my pleasure to walk you through the conference. The conference started in the mid of June. We organized masterclass on July 1st with two eminent speakers, resource people, especially Dr. Ankita Shetty and Dr. Sonia Singh. And taking the legacy of knowledge sharing forward today, we have with us Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, sir, as a director and professor of strategy at the IIMB, as our chief guest for day one. Two keynote speakers, Dr. Amitav Anand and Dr. Mario Hack, who is again joining us through online. Followed by lunch, we will be having the most excited and delighted presentations from our participants, which are scheduled both online and also offline. And day two, we have two eminent speakers, Mr. Vijeta Shastri, Executive Director, Dexter Capital, and Mr. Anirudhan Vasudevan, Senior Director, HR Replicon. We are glad to inform you that we have received over 200 papers for the conference, which went through a rigorous reviewing process. We followed strict quality parameters to shortlist the papers to be presented at the conference. From shortlisted papers, again, they will pass through with the standards of IGI Global, in which we have proposed a special issue, and it's already accepted by the IGI Global International Journal of Business Intelligence and Research. We are expecting the special issue to be launched by November 2022. Okay, and the special issue is listed already in ABDC as well as the Scopus. Along with this, Jain University is also planning to have an international journal, which will be announced shortly. And we are grateful to Dr. Dinesh, sir, Director of CMS, all my team for organizing committee and student coordinators. I'm delighted to see that our conference has attracted such a large, diverse group of speakers, participants, combining intelligence, brilliance with practical experience. We believe this conference will be an enriching educational experience for all. And we wish you a very productive two-day international conference ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants and attendees, I'm profusely elated to introduce our chief guest for today's conference, that is Professor Rishikesha Krishnan. Professor Krishnan is the Director and Professor of Strategy at IIM Bangalore. He held Jamuna Raghavan Chair in Entrepreneurship at IIMB from 2007 to 2010. He completed a 5-year term as the Director of Indian Institute of Management, Indore, in December 2018. Professor Krishnan was educated at IIT Kanpur, Stanford University, and IIM Ahmedabad. His main areas of interest are strategy and innovation. He has been listed in the Thinkers 50 India list of the most influential management thinkers from India. Apart from publications in academic journals, case studies, and articles in business press, Professor Krishnan has written 2 books. The first one is 8 Steps to Innovation, Going from Jugaad to Excellence, which won the Best Book Award in 2013-14 from the Indian Society for Training and Development. And his second book is From Jugaad to Systematic Innovation, The Challenge for India. Professor Krishnan was the member of the expert committee set by the Government of India in 2017-18 under the chairmanship of Justice B.N. Sri Krishna to propose a data protection framework for India. He is a member of the board of Higher Education Financing Agency and Wheels India Limited. He is also a trustee of the Foundation for Excellence India Trust. Professor Krishnan co-founded one startup and was the CEO of another. He has been on the jury of Economic Times Startup Awards. He is currently on the advisory board of Your Nest Investment Advisors. With immense respect and gratitude, I welcome Professor Rishikesha Krishnan to address our participants in attendance.
Yeah, just give us a minute to set up things up. Good. Okay. How do I change the slide? Your mouse work. Isn't it? This is better. Good. Okay. Yeah, very good morning to all of you. Particular welcome to all of you in the back row who are all looking at your mobile phones. Good to see you. Hi. Okay. So first of all, thanks to the organizers for inviting me to the conference, and congratulations and compliments for all the effort you have put in organizing this. So I know the effort that goes into organizing any conference, and I'm sure you're all happy that it's off the ground and will be happening over the next couple of days. So I thought I will use this opportunity to talk a little bit about the interface between innovation and sustainability, because I wanted to talk about a theme which is related to your conference. I've been working in the area of managing innovation for several years now, as you must have heard from the introduction. And one of the areas which has been of interest to us in India is frugal innovation. But there are some challenges when you look at frugal innovation from a sustainability point of view. One might start by thinking that frugal innovation is inherently sustainable. But when you look into it in a bit more detail, you will find that there are some issues which we need to address. So essentially, my talk this morning is going to focus on this interface between frugal innovation and sustainability. So if you look at frugal innovation, it's something we are quite proud of, that in India, we have been very good at frugal innovation over the years. And you must have heard of many of these innovations, whether it be Arvind Eye Care, or it be the Jaipur Foot, or it be things like the open source drug discovery. I mean, there are several examples given here. These are all from a report by a UK consulting firm, which was trying to say that India is really the hub of frugal innovation. So this is definitely something we can be quite proud of. Now, what does it take to do frugal innovation? Well, in our research, we found that there are three important dimensions which go into frugal innovation. One is you need a frugal mindset. That is, you need to see frugal innovation as a challenge, and you need to essentially be highly motivated by finding frugal solutions. The second important dimension of frugal innovation is to adopt a frugal process, and I will in a minute explain to you what that means. And finally, of course, what we are looking for from frugal innovation is a frugal outcome, which essentially means we are looking at how much higher levels of performance, typically at much lower levels of cost. So let's just spend a minute looking at what a frugal mindset means. So when you look at a frugal mindset, what it really means is that you should see designing something like a desk for $50, as Ingvar Kamprad so nicely described here, as a bigger challenge than designing one which might cost $1,000. So to build something that is functional and elegant for $50, if that excites you, then you have the mindset to undertake frugal innovation. Now, often frugal innovation is driven by resource scarcity because you don't have the resources available. But there's also a growing belief that frugal innovation can be taught. And in fact, you can train people to be frugal innovators. In fact, there's a program on design for extreme affordability at the Stanford Design School, which trains design professionals in how to design for very, very aggressive cost targets. Second element, of course, as I mentioned, is a frugal process. Essentially, what you want to do in a frugal process is bring many of the principles of management which are relevant, like lean thinking, a focus on simplicity, waste minimization, clean slate design, etc., to the entire innovation process. I'll be speaking about this in a little more detail as we go along, because this is very much at the heart of how do you build a frugal innovation capability. And last but not the least, as I mentioned, is of course the search or the quest for a frugal outcome, where we are looking at significant cost advantage or productivity gain or increase in functionality per unit cost. And in certain cases, this could of course be disruptive in terms of the features it offers, affordability, ease of use, etc. So what does it take in an organization to do frugal innovation? How should you look at the innovation process, and how should you look at your innovation design in order to do frugal innovation on a regular basis? Well, to look at that question, we've been working on it for some years, and we identified a set of principles which we call the responsive principles. It's a nice acronym because it also sort of signifies that you're trying to be very responsible, and at the same time, you're also trying to be very proactive in the way you innovate. We identified these 9 principles as at the core of frugal innovation. But what I'm going to tell you during the course of this talk is when you start taking sustainability into account, maybe these principles need to undergo some modification. So what I will be building up to towards the end is what is the revised framework we need to follow to give enough attention to sustainability, yet at the same time not lose the benefits of frugality. So these are the core principles we identified. The first one is about identifying requirements. Second one is about starting from scratch or without preconceived notions. The third is to do process redesign. The fourth is about open collaboration. Then we are talking about taking nothing for granted or as given. Then simplicity. The seventh one is iterative optimization, virtual intelligence, and finally economies of scale and scope. So what I'm going to do is spend about a couple of minutes on each one of these so that you understand how they're important. Then I'll come to the conflicts with sustainability, and then I'll close with the new framework. So that's essentially what I'm going to be covering in my presentation. So the first important dimension of any attempt at frugal innovation is how you go about identifying the requirements. The core here is very simple. You need to identify the core functionalities that are required, which will give you the basic functionality, but without compromising on basic safety or performance. So this is what you really want to have when you're talking about frugal innovation. Just look at this picture carefully. If you look at it, I'm sure it's not as sharp as it should be because I took it from the internet, but if you just strain your eyes a little bit, you'll be able to see. You see some interesting things happening here. Those of you who can read the script will now see that it says it's a primary health center. And what you'll see is, of course, that instead of doing something inside the building, they seem to be actually doing this procedure or this diagnostic test outside the building, right? Second thing is, of course, you can see some animals grazing around. So it's not the best setting or not the most hygienic setting for sure. So why do you think they are outside the building? They're not inside the building? Friends at the back. Why do you think they're outside the building? Yeah, probably because there's no power, no light inside. So they probably needed some light to be able to do this. You can also see some other things. Right on the table, you can see a small instrument. And you can see somebody who looks like a doctor operating that instrument. And of course, you can see a patient on a makeshift bed lying right there. So what we see, of course, is a kind of interesting. Okay, I think this thing has got stuck. Just escape it for 1 minute. Okay, so what are the core requirements of the device we see in this picture? Now you should compare this with what a full-fledged or a kind of all bells and whistles ECG looks like, okay? So this is an ECG machine which you might see in the hospital. You can see it's actually much more complex than the one we saw on that table or on that makeshift bed out there in the field. So essentially, what is the difference between the two? The difference between the two is in this portable ECG machine, they really identified what are the core things that need to go into it. They need to have a first line diagnostic instrument, which can basically identify if something wrong. Maybe it doesn't need the most accurate ECG in the world, but what it needs to be able to tell the doctor is, does this patient need to be moved immediately to the hospital? Or maybe it's something which you can just take care of through some local treatment. So you need to be able to identify or show any irregularities for sure. Of course, it has to be rugged and dust-proof. You saw the kind of environment in which they're using. It would also be helpful if it contains some intelligence of its own, because you may not always have a qualified doctor there. Sometimes you might need a paramedic or someone to operate it. So maybe if there's some indicator light which says that there's something right or wrong or something, that might be helpful. Of course, clearly it might need power supply, because its own power supply, because you clearly don't have the regular power supply available there. So these are some of the requirements which come out: small, compact, battery operated, simple printer, maybe low cost. So you can see that just identifying those core requirements is a very critical part of frugal innovation. What we also know from other studies in innovation is that when we are looking at all the different elements that go into delivery of a product or service, you often need to innovate in multiple elements of these if you want a real significant benefit to accrue to the user or customer. So if you're looking at the business model, the process, the offering, and the delivery, you often need to innovate maybe in 5 or 6 elements of this in order to be able to really create a significant innovation. So the first thing, remember, is you need to get the requirements right. Okay, if you give very elaborate requirements that will push up the cost, you need to get the requirements just aligned with what is the functionality you're trying to provide. Second important thing is you should probably start from scratch. Why is it important to start from scratch? Because if you don't do that, there will be a whole lot of costs which are already embedded in the solution, which are difficult to remove. For example, many multinationals, when they try to address a market like India, where purchasing power is low, they take an existing product of theirs and try to de-feature it. They try to remove bells and whistles and try to then make this a product which they will offer to the market. But that's often not a good idea, because even though you might be removing some of those bells and whistles, there is already a lot of cost embedded in that solution because of the initial way in which you designed it. So how do you overcome that? Let me give you an example from Gillette. So Gillette, of course, is, as you all know, it's one of the leading shaving solution companies in the world. One of the big challenges for Gillette has been how to address the Indian market. And for many years, they did not have products which could address the mass market. So one of the questions they kept asking is, how do we go about addressing a product for the mass market? So what they did some years ago is they sent a team from their male grooming department. It made a visit to about 300 Indian homes and spent about 3,000 hours with 1,000 consumers immersed in their lives. They decided we need to understand the requirements from ground up, and we need to build a product, just based on those requirements rather than starting with our established products. They learned some interesting things. One thing they learned is that Indian men typically shave under pretty challenging conditions. They don't have running water. They often don't have light. They may not even have a mirror. So essentially their challenge was probably not to have the closest shave in the world, but just to have a shave and not get hurt, and you didn't want to have any kind of disaster happening in the process. Also, because they're not shaving so often the whatever had to be shaved was much tougher, and therefore you also needed a blade which could handle that. So essentially they realized that the requirements in India for a opening shaver or a sort of entry-level shaver were very different. So they built 5 prototypes over 9 months. They made an interesting decision. Some of you might know that Gillette's high-end product is something called Gillette Fusion. That Fusion actually has 5 blades embedded in that sandwich blade. Here they went in exactly the opposite direction. They said, we'll look at only 1 blade. The objective was very simple. We'll have a good cut-free shave. Rather than having 25, 30 components in the shaver, they had just 4 components to bring down cost. Of course, a lighter and cheaper handle, low-cost material, manufacturing process, etc. And of course, finally, this became quite a popular product in the market. So I'm just trying to make the case that starting from scratch by immersing yourself in the customers, understanding their needs, and then designing a product which is aligned with their needs is more likely to be a good way of doing frugal innovation than trying to de-feature an existing product. What was the result of this? Well, they were finally able to launch a product that could meet the needs of Indian customers. Gillette Guard, it's still very much in the market today. The price has, of course, crept up. It's not 15 rupees anymore. It's some 21 or 23 or something like that. Anyway, it's crept up over time, but it enabled them to address a much larger market than they were able to address earlier. Of course, just because you did this, it doesn't mean there are no problems. They have other challenges. For example, Gillette traditionally has protected its products by extensive patent shields. This is one of the most amazing things I found out. There's something called the Gillette Mach 3 razor. You can just go and look at it in any store. It has 57 US patents covering it, 57. I'm really intrigued to find out how they found 57 dimensions to patent in that, but this is the list of all the 57 US patents they have around them. So one of the challenges they face, of course, is how do you protect something like the guard, which is obviously much more simple. But there are some interesting takeaways as well. I think the most interesting takeaway for me, which is something which I would particularly like to suggest to my young student friends here, is, unlike in established markets where most product categories are already mature, and therefore you're trying to imagine needs which even the customers have not thought of, somebody like Steve Jobs, for example. In India, there are still a lot of very, very visible basic needs that are not met. So you don't perhaps need all this sixth sense into what people are going to use in the future. Even just trying to address those unmet needs is a great opportunity for new products and services. And of course, I'm underlining again that starting with a clean sheet design can help you make fundamental changes in the price performance equation. Okay, I already spoke about this, so I'll not talk about that again. The next dimension of frugal innovation is about re-engineering. It could be also about process redesign. This is one way you can really bring down the cost. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the example of Arvind Eye Care, so I don't need to go about it in detail, but there are 2 or 3 things which really I found interesting about the whole Arvind Eye Care approach to cataract surgery. Most of you might know that Dr. Venkateswamy, who is the founder of Arvind Eye Care, he really took up as his life's challenge, how can I eliminate needless blindness? And cataract is something that's easily curable. It is you just have to detect it, and you can, through a very simple operation, you can address it. But many people don't even know they have cataract. And of course, for many years, it was very expensive. So what did Arvind Eye Care do? They realized that the most critical resource in doing the cataract surgery was that of the doctor. The doctor's time was very expensive. So a typical doctor was able to do only about 6 to 8 surgeries a day. So the only way of bringing down the cost significantly was to enhance the productivity of the doctor or surgeon. So they essentially tried to figure out how to do that. And what they found was, if you could change the process, if you could create something like an assembly line where a paramedic or some other assistant would do all the not so critical steps, and the doctor would focus just on doing the most critical steps in the operation, the productivity of the surgeon could go up from 6 to 8 to maybe 25 to 30 surgeries a day. Of course, you have to take some precautions to avoid infection and so on. But if you could get all that in place, you could make significant increases in the productivity of the surgeon. As a result, you can see that the cost comes down by a factor of 3 or 4. So if you have the right model in place, maybe for every paying patient, you could actually do 2 or 3 surgeries free. So this is what enables the Arvind Eye Care model to work so well. And incidentally, this has been extended to other areas like cardiac surgery. Some of us would probably not imagine that cardiac surgery could also be made more efficient. But people like Dr. Devi Shetty have tried to do exactly that, using very similar principles to what is done in Arvind Eye Care. Another way of looking at this whole process of frugal innovation is to enhance collaboration. There are many ways. For example, just coming back to Narayana Healthcare itself, one of the things they realized is that once the patient goes home, you need to be able to take care of the patient well. So how do you improve the probability that the patient's care at home will be good and the patient won't have to come back to the hospital in an emergency situation? One way to do that was to train the patient's family when the patient is in the hospital, so that the family is ready to take care of the patient once he or she goes home. And this is exactly what NH does through their Care Companion program. This also enables them to maybe release the patient from the hospital just a tad earlier, which also increases the efficiency of the hospital. So this is just a very simple way of using other stakeholders to help deliver the entire process in a better way. Similarly, if you look at the Tata Swachh water filter, it brought together a whole set of companies in the Tata group to design what was a very efficient solution for water purification. The next important element of frugal innovation is to take nothing for granted or given. The Tata Nano might not have been a great commercial success, but it was certainly a landmark as far as innovation management in India is concerned. These are some of the questions which the Tata Motors team asked when they were looking at the design of the Tata Nano. For example, why does it need to have a steel body? Why does it have to be manufactured centrally? Do you need to have two windshield wipers? Does the engine have to be placed in the front? Why can't it be placed in the back, and so on? So many of these questions enable them to look at the design of the car in a very different way, which basically allowed a lot of innovation, which would drive down the costs. And many of you are familiar with many of the design changes that came about as a result. You might also like to think about the importance of simplicity. Simplicity is really at the heart of frugal innovation. The whole idea is you avoid all frills. This essentially brings down the cost significantly. There are a lot of examples of simplicity driving frugal innovation in India. One good example is the Godrej Shotocool, which is an alternate solution to refrigeration. It doesn't have a compressor, but it enables you to cool maybe a small number of items, and also not to the extent you could in a refrigerator, but probably good enough to store something overnight. And you can just see the simplicity of the design and how it enables the entire innovation process. One long-term innovation which has really demonstrated the importance of simplicity is the Tata 407 light commercial vehicle. It's on the road even today, though the first models were, I think, created about 30 years ago or thereabouts. What's interesting about the Tata 407 is that this was a response to a whole set of Japanese-Indian joint ventures which entered the LCV business. You might remember some of them, Swaraj Mazda, Alvin Nissan, etc. And when those vehicles were launched, most people predicted that Tata Motors would simply not be able to compete with them. But Tata Motors, in fact, surprised them by being the longest surviving player or the most resilient player out of all of them, by simply designing a product that was very rugged, easy to repair, and good value for money. Did it have the best engine in the world? Probably not. Was it the most modern design? Maybe not. But was it the vehicle most suited for Indian roads? Probably yes, because it was easy to maintain and it could be provided in a whole range of different options, which customers found very good to use. I mean, that was shown in the previous slide. What we've also seen in frugal innovation is that it needs to be an iterative process. You're unlikely to get that best solution on the first try. You need to go through repeated iterations as you try to squeeze cost out of the system. I really like this quote from Girish Wagh, who was the head of the Tata Nano project. He says, if somebody comes and asks me what fantastic innovation solved the problem, I would have to say there was none. It was small things that engineers did. So they went through these repeated cycles as they tried to redesign and squeeze all costs out of the Tata Nano system. Of course, you don't have to always depend on that open-ended process. Over time, people have also developed a whole lot of heuristics, often called design for manufacturing rules, which drive this kind of cost reduction or squeezing out of cost from manufacturers' solutions. I won't read them all out, but you can look them up if in case you want to look something further at this. Let me give you an example of another company which has used this kind of approach to design its products very effectively for markets like India. Many of you would know that Renault was a relatively late entrant into the Indian automobile market. They had an earlier joint venture with Mahindra, which is best captured by a vehicle called the Logan, which is largely used as a taxi. You might have seen it, and if you have seen any of the airport taxis here, many of them use that Mahindra Logan. But when Mahindra decided to enter, Renault decided to enter on their own, they had to follow a different approach. The question they asked is, how does a late entrant break into what is already a crowded automotive market? So they decided, like we saw in the case of the Gillette Guard, that they need to start ground up and try and identify what are the requirements. Broadly, they first, of course, found that SUV was an emerging market, and that was obviously a good call because we see even today the market moving more and more towards the SUV side. So they did a similar deep dive. They did an ethnographic study of 30 families in a target segment over 2 months. They found some interesting things here. They found, for example, that there was a significant set of customers which wanted a vehicle that looked like an SUV, but the driving experience was closer to that of a car, in the sense that they were not really going to use it in rugged conditions. They were not going and driving out in the country somewhere. They were really driving on city roads, but they liked the idea that they were driving an SUV. But finally, because you had to drive in the city, it had to have the maneuverability, say, of a typical car. So, but Renault decided that building something ground up was just far too expensive. So they followed a different approach. They took an existing SUV from their family, but instead they decided to do an extensive re-engineering of that car. They identified 41 modifications. They realized the importance of exterior design because customers were clearly looking for a good exterior. They realized that in India, the rear seat was important, probably not as important as it was in the developed markets. Also, air conditioning and comfort were important. The road conditions were not as good, so you needed to reinforce the suspension, ruggedize the vehicle, etc. And of course, they identified the right price point to take it forward. But what is also interesting, the way they executed this in the company, they followed a process which they called fast, frugal, and fantastic, which was essentially this iterative process to really drive the design and the launch of this particular vehicle. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the framework. So the next important point is virtual intelligence. You all know that today we have a lot of intelligence which can go into a product thanks to the electronics and microprocessors and everything that we have. So how do you use that to drive frugal innovation? Just remember, if you look at the evolution of the chip as a functionality and the power of the chips have grown so fast, thanks to Moore's law and all those other phenomena which we have seen, that has actually been a big driver of frugal innovation in itself. What we today have on our mobile phone was earlier a mainframe computer occupying a whole room maybe 30 years back. So that's the increase in computing power which we have got over time. So it's not only about hardware now, it's also about software and machine learning that are enabling a whole lot of intelligence to be put into products in different ways. There are several examples. I just give you a couple of them. One is Niramai, which is a company based here in Bangalore. Typically, we know that one of the major causes of female death, particularly in India, is breast cancer. So, and it's a disease which once again can be cured if it's identified early. But breast cancer is often not identified early for a whole range of societal and other reasons. So are there better ways of identifying breast cancer early is the question which Niramai started with. And what they realized is that there are alternate methods, for example, thermal imaging, which is not as dangerous as radiation, which could be done even by a not so qualified technician. But for thermal image scans to be accurate enough to detect breast cancer, you need additional support through machine learning. You need to basically train the algorithms to improve the accuracy. So that's what Niramai has done today. And they offer a thermal imaging based solution for detection of breast cancer, which is not only very affordable, but is also quite easy to execute and implement. Or take this example, which is from a company called Vigyan Labs, which is based in Mysore. We all know that another important trend is that a lot of computing is moving to the cloud. It's been happening for the last decade or so. So just because it's moving to the cloud doesn't mean there are no computers. There are huge banks of servers with Google, Facebook, Amazon, whichever company you can think of, or with the service providers like AWS and Azure. And those servers are guzzling huge amounts of electricity and also the resulting in very significant emission of greenhouse gases and global warming and so on. So this company, Vigyan Labs, essentially decided to take this up as a challenge. How do we address the whole problem of computing shifting to the cloud and at the same time power consumption going up significantly, and these solutions currently making a big contribution to global warming? So they decided to find an algorithm which can reduce the power consumption in data centers. And some statistics suggest that data centers can waste as much as 90% or more of the power they pull from the grid. And what Vigyan Labs tries to do is reduce the power consumption of the data center by about 30%. So that's quite significant. So what you can see here is that all these virtual intelligence driven solutions have the ability to really come up with very low cost solutions that can solve very important problems. Finally, in the original framework, we looked at the economies of scale and scope. For example, you might find it interesting to know that this printer on this ECG machine is actually the same printer that KSRTC uses to print bus tickets. They realized that because that printer was already being manufactured in large volumes, using that printer in their ECG machine brought down the cost significantly rather than designing a printer separately for this ECG machine. So this is what economies of scale and scope are all about. If you can find the right solutions which are already being used in large volumes, you can bring down the cost very significantly. And there are many other examples. I won't dwell on them too much. One interesting example you might want to look at is LifeSpring Hospitals, which is based in Hyderabad. This is a hospital which is focused exclusively on gynecology and obstetrics, largely on obstetrics. It's focused on delivery of babies. And essentially, it's designed as a specialty hospital around that. It has a very interesting design where all the hospitals are focused on being centers of obstetrics, but they have a common diagnostic center, which is like at the center, and all these hospitals are around, like in a kind of web and spoke kind of configuration. And very similar to the way, for example, Amazon designs its whole supply chain, right? They have this some centralized warehouse, and then they have all these distributed distribution centers. Very similar to that, they designed this hospital scale setup to use economies of scope and scale to bring down the cost of very high quality obstetrics services. Okay, now let me come to the last, but perhaps the most important thing which I wanted to talk about today is, okay, I spoke all about the importance of frugal innovation, how you do it, etc. Now, how does frugal innovation either help or come into conflict with sustainability, which is the core question which I wanted to address. Now, we all know that sustainability is a big challenge in India, for sure, right? For example, we are the 4th largest emitter of carbon dioxide. We have very significant and pretty challenging commitments we made in the COP26 meeting in Glasgow. If you look at the commitments which our Prime Minister made, you can see that we have set pretty ambitious targets, and we are going to face quite significant challenges in meeting these targets. So there is a big problem out there. That much we know. Now, how does frugal innovation connect with all this sustainability debate? So at the one end of the story, frugal innovation is probably good for sustainability because we are talking about solutions that just meet the minimum levels of functionality. So in terms of materials use, in terms of the financial resources required, these are probably good solutions from a material source point of view. And remember, frugal innovation is all about the ability to do more with less. So we are essentially trying to minimize the use of resources like energy, capital, and time. So that's the good news. I think that's one thing. But if you look at the debate about frugal innovation, you read an article about frugal innovation, you'll see a lot of the focus is more on economic and social sustainability rather than environmental or ecological sustainability. So in fact, the ecological impact of frugal innovation is seen more as a spillover effect or a side effect. Because if you look at frugal entrepreneurs or frugal innovators, their focus is more on the economic or social dimensions. It's not so much on the environment or ecological dimensions. So remember, there are going to be fallouts of driving frugal innovation as well. The first one is going to be obviously as you start making more and more of these low-cost products, you're going to be using more and more raw materials. Admittedly, you might be using less material than a more sophisticated solution, but the fact that you're driving volumes by this is going to use a lot of raw materials. This might involve continuing with unsustainable low-cost manufacturing, and there is also a significant issue of generation of waste. And remember, sometimes this waste might be more in the nature of externalities, because in your effort or endeavor to bring down the cost, it's unlikely you're going to try and internalize the costs of all the waste that you are creating. The focus on available resources and affordability may also detract from sustainability effects. For example, your solution, which is the most frugal, may not necessarily be the most sustainable. You might actually, for example, find that putting different plastics together is a good solution from the frugality point of view, but it may not be a good solution from the sustainability point of view. In fact, you would know that in Europe, for example, in most plastic products, you cannot use multiple types of plastic in the same product because it's very difficult to recycle if different types of plastic are used as part of the same product. Of course, there is also the whole demand effect. By becoming more affordable, frugal innovation will enable more people to buy them, and thus there will be increased consumption, which may have its own results as far as environmental damage is concerned. So clearly, there are going to be dilemmas between the deteriorating ecological sustainability by increased demand and, of course, the improved social sustainability and economic sustainability of the communities that use them. And I would particularly worry about the end of life stage, where frugal innovation can cause ecological problems by improper disposal. In fact, if you look at India, one of the drivers of frugal innovation is often externalities you're creating for others. For example, people are doing things in a place which is not a recognized factory environment, and they are just dumping their waste, maybe along with the municipal waste and so on, which makes it very difficult to reprocess. Or they are creating a lot of noise, but they're not building a factory, and that noise is just being transmitted to residential communities. So there are a lot of issues related to frugal innovation, which are potentially causing significant negative externalities. So using subsidized inputs, creating high negative externalities, using low cost just based on labor cost arbitrage alone, all of these, of course, are unsustainable frugal innovation. What we should also realize is that this is beginning to show up in society and in policy issues. Some of you would know that this whole term Jugaad is based on a vehicle called the Jugaad, which is used in some parts of Western UP and Punjab and so on, which is hammered together using local materials. It's basically an improvised vehicle which is used on local farms. Recently, there was a big controversy, I think it was in Punjab, on whether this Jugaad vehicle should be banned because it certainly doesn't meet any road safety standards. And ultimately, the government, in fact, introduced a ban and then had to pull it back because of societal protests. But you can see that what was earlier taken for granted or accepted as a solution, today it's coming into conflict with some of the basic safety standards we are trying to place in society. Another interesting example is what happens with sachets. Now, I'm sure many of you are interested in marketing would know that the plastic sachet was seen as a great marketing innovation. It allowed you to sell small packs of shampoo or detergent or hair oil or whatever it was and expand the market as far as low-end customers are concerned or customers who had challenged wallets. But today, it's coming back to bite us. In fact, the recent reports that in some parts of South Asia, it is those plastic sachets which are clogging our drainage systems, clogging the oceans, or at least causing pollution problems in the oceans and so on. And the same companies which pioneered these solutions today are not willing to take full responsibility for some of the problems they have created. I would urge you to look at some of these articles online. There's a very interesting one about Unilever and plastic sachets, which bring home all these controversies and conflicts that we are looking at. So what is the outcome of all of this? Basically, the outcome is I think we need to recast that responsive framework. So what I'm now suggesting is that in addition to what was there already, and I've slightly rearranged it now, we also need to have another E for environmentally sustainable. This needs to be as important. Maybe in fact, we should put it up on top, because this is going to be as important a dimension for frugal innovation going forward as or many of the other elements we talked about in the past. Of course, this is not going to be an easy process. As you would have guessed from some of the things I spoke about, there are going to be other challenges. The first question is, how are we going to define ecological, sustainable, frugal innovation? It's a mouthful, but that's what we need to do. We need to figure out what it means. We have to, along with the definition, also agree on what are the criteria for ecological, sustainable, frugal innovation. And we need to be able to figure out how do we assess ecological, sustainable, frugal innovation. What's the assessment model? What are the indicators, etc. So just a suggestion for some of you who are looking for projects and looking for something interesting to do, you might take up some of these questions and try to address them. It's quite an open field, I think, at this point of time. But the future of frugal innovation, to my mind, depends quite significantly on its ability to integrate sustainability more comprehensively into the approach. So thank you. Let me just stop here. Let me once again congratulate all the organizers and our Dean and Vice Chancellor and the conference organizers and everyone for putting together this conference. Congratulations to all the foot soldiers who put in all the effort to make the conference happen. And once again, hi to all of you at the back. And I hope you guys use this opportunity to learn a lot from all the speakers in the conference. So thank you, and I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insights on the interface between frugal innovation and sustainability, and how frugal innovation is a challenge to achieve, as it requires high level of performance and low cost. Thank you for also explaining responsive core principles of frugal innovation, like requirement identification, open collaboration, simplicity, virtual intelligence, etc., along with plenty of supporting examples. Thank you for giving your precious time and enlightening us on how we all can build products using innovation, frugal innovation, and social sustainability. This session was indeed very, very informative and innovative. Thank you for the brilliant session, sir. I request Dr. Harold Patrick to felicitate our chief guest. Thank you, dignitaries, for your valuable time and insights. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Shamli Banerjee to talk about a forthcoming media conference on the topic Ethics in Research and Principle of Ethical Journalism and its impact on society, to be held on 27th and 28th of September 2022.
Good morning, my dear students and the honorable delegates over here, my distinguished guests. I'm Dr. Shamki Banerjee, actually from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. This is going to be the first conference on media ethics and its impact on society. So just considering the August gathering, I took the opportunity, I requested the conference convener and other members to make an announcement, but somehow, because I'm the convener of this forthcoming conference, I'm giving a idea of what we are going to do. Basically, research ethics is a rising concern for all of us. Maintaining ethics is also a terrible task, and especially media ethics. When you talk about ethics in media, we have two different, I always think of media ethics in terms of two different dimensions. One is the performative roles of the media and the normative roles of the media. When we say normative roles, that is something related to should be, would be, like to be, all this. But when the performative roles, how media is performing in reality to afford those ethics, where actually we are trying to understand where we stand now at this point of time when digitization, digital, everywhere we see digitization is a rising phenomenon which create a lot of problem for the media professionals as well, and it's a growing threat for all of us. So we are trying to understand this scenario, how it's going to help us, where we lead to. So that's the whole idea about. Now I request all the students, participants here, if you have an interest in our media conference, please send your abstract and try to participate in our forthcoming conference. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We will take a short break now. I request you all to assemble back to Seminar Hall 1 at 11:25 a.m. for the keynote address by Dr. Amitabh Anand. Thank you all.
Yes.
Second. I think you should be able to hear me now. Am I audible? Yeah. So I'm coming on the speaker, right? Speakerphone. Yes, yes. So that should be fine. Okay. So I'll go ahead and share my video and my screen. Okay. Just let me know when I can start.
ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲ ಇಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಮಾಡಿ.
All right.
ಇನ್ನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸೈಡ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಬುಡ ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗೈತೆ. ಈಗ ಬಿಡಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಟೈಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? ನಿಮಿಷ ಹೇಳಿ. ಟೇಕ್ ದ ಕ್ಯಾಮರಾ. ಬಿಡಿ 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 ಸರ್. ಬಿದ್ದೋಯ್ತದೆ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ. ಈಗ ಬಬಲ್ ಸೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರಾ? ಈಗ
Dear participants and attendees, welcome back. Dear participants and attendees, welcome back.
Sir, it's unmute. It's unmute.
Is my voice audible, Sachin? Hello.
We'll start.
Dear participants and attendees, welcome back. Now we will begin with the keynote address by Dr. Amitabh Anand. I request Dr. Kiran Mane to introduce our keynote speaker.
Good morning to one and all present here. It is indeed a pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Amitabh Anand. Dr. Amitabh Anand, presently the Associate Professor for Excelia Business School in La Rochelle, France. Previously, he has held positions as Assistant Professor at Schema Business School, University, Uttek Azur. Dr. Amitabh holds a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering from Mysore. He secured a scholarship to do MBA from Scotland University, Sweden, and full scholarship winner for pursuing a PhD from Niome Business School, Paris, France. Presently, he is in process of defending his HDR, a second PhD from Aix-Marseille University, France, where he also serves as an affiliate researcher. Dr. Amitabh also holds a position at IIM Kozhikode as a research advisor committee member, where he is supervising one doctoral student and also as a research fellow at the HSC National Research University, Russia, where he is supervising 3 doctoral students. He has won several awards in research: Academy of Management Conference, USA, Best Paper Proceedings Award, Excellence in Peer Review from South Asian Journal of Human Resources, Emerging Scholar Award from Organization Studies Research Network in Germany. For his contribution to teaching and impact on student learning, he is the only one from Europe to be chosen as top 50 world's best professors among 400 nominations worldwide by Ports and Cons USA. For his innovative course design, he has won an outstanding pedagogical innovation award by Schema Business School. His research works are published in top 50 journals, including ABDC B category. He is associate editor journal in most of the ABDC journal, category B. He is a member of European Academy of Management. He is a visiting professor for universities in India, Russia, and Nordics. His research is interdisciplinary with particular emphasis on organizational studies in the context of individual, interpersonal, group behaviors, and entrepreneurship in context of ethics, uncertainty, sustainability, and emerging economies, and understanding the regular consumption pattern behavior from the context of product, service, and digital technology. Along with this, he is proficient with bibliometric and conceptual in literature reviews and works on designing methods to improve academic scholars' scientific consistency, methodological rigor, and productivity. With immense respect and honor, I welcome Dr. Amitabh Anand. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Please let me know if I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So first of all, my thanks to Jain University Center for Management Studies, the dean, the faculty members, the vice chancellor, and everyone for inviting me to this session. I must apologize, and I sincerely say sorry because I couldn't participate physically, even though I'm in India, due to a very unavoidable situation. So I'm sorry for that. But however, thanks to technology, that I'm still able to communicate and share my talk with all of you today. And I wish the organizers and all the committee members great success for this two-day event. And I was actually trying to listen to what the IM professor Dr. Rishi was talking about. And thank you so much for inviting me. So without wasting much of time, and I'll start my presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if everybody are able to see the screen that I'm sharing now. Is this visible now for everyone? Is it okay? Can I continue now?
Yes, sir. We can visit. Yeah, it's visible, sir. You can go on.
All right. So thank you so much, Sachin. Thank you, madam, and everyone. So my today's topic for this today international conference keynote is going to be on digital globalization, a topic that I feel is pretty relevant and important in today's technological era that we are living in. And I'll be sharing some of the insights and examples, and also leave you all with a few questions that might actually help you to understand and reflect at the end of my talk. So I'll approximately take around 30 to 40 minutes to speak, and then we'll have some open-ended questions for discussions. So I come from La Rochelle Business School, which is in France. Okay, and I'm working as an associate professor there for international business, human resources, and leadership courses. And one of the things that I've been trying to explore and understand in the past few years is to see how, the international businesses are getting connected, globally, and how opportunities and how, entrepreneurs are able to scale up their businesses, to different boundaries or to different countries altogether. So when I think of digital globalization, of course, most of you are already familiar with what is globalization. It's not a new topic. So globalization in simple terms is, where every countries have opened their boundaries and borders for business transactions. Okay. So if I have to give you a simple example of globalization is, I myself is an example of a globalization. So due to the opportunity Europe had given me for me to pursue my education, and Europe gave me the opportunity to, explore my talent and develop my skills and to be an economic migrant, it is all thanks to globalization. However, when we talk about digital globalization, it is completely different. Just to show you some statistics to understand what exactly it is that, McKinsey Research has basically, coined this term, and they've been the pioneers in discussing about understanding how, globalization used to be in the past and how it has changed, in the last few years. So as you can see, earlier there used to be a lot of, tangible flows of physical goods. You would see a lot of transportation, you would see a lot of things that was happening, many, many years ago. And we were all once, part and parcel of those physical goods transformation. And now you can imagine, at least in the last 10 years, things have significantly changed. And you would see that, a lot of data and information have started to flow, which means to say that the power of technology, the power of internet has given users and people like you and me to connect, to exploit information, to search for information, and to search for even opportunities, in terms of business, or in terms of education, or in terms of connectivity, or in terms of helping or developing or contributing to some social cause. So how these things actually changed? Why should we be more concerned about digital globalization? What is so important about digital globalization? Just to give you a small example, if all of you know the country called Vietnam, okay, so Vietnam is now emerging as one of the stronger emerging economies in terms of digital technologies and in terms of development and business participation, etc. In the Asiatic region. The reason is pretty simple. Every of these smaller countries started to capitalize on the technology that they had. Okay, so globalization actually gave them immense opportunities to widen up their processes, widen up their businesses, and also increase their investments. Okay, so with this application, what started to happen is, more of knowledge intensive flow started to enter into different economies. Okay, now take example of China, or take example of India. We have the largest populous country among the globe, and we are trying to have more users and users added every year, or almost every day there are new users to internet, or there are new users to mobile phone. So when these technologies and the data and information started to flow between the countries, the digital infrastructure started to become very important in the last few years. Okay, so companies started to invest in more of digital infrastructure, digital securities, technology infrastructures. For example, after COVID pandemic, no one would have actually thought, there could be something like online education, or online degrees, or online courses, and people had very less thought about, can we actually work online. But we learn from mistakes, we learn from events and circumstances, and because of COVID-19, all of us were glued to our systems, to our mobile phones, and to our technology infrastructure that we have. So the day starts with Google, or the day ends with Facebook, or the day starts with Instagram, or the day ends with Zoom meetings. So this is how the last few years have been for many working professionals. So these digital infrastructure, when they started to come, many companies started to capitalize on the need and the importance of, why digital infrastructure is critical for a growing economy. That is why in the context of globalization, or in the context of digital globalization, the role of digital infrastructure has been extremely important. Okay, now when smaller businesses, example, okay, let us say that you have some consulting companies, and you're a product manufacturing company, and you're trying to see how you can mobilize different resources online, or how we can mobilize different supports online to scale up your business, or to expand your business to different countries. Technology started to give a little bit of room for smaller enterprises. Okay, now if you take example of India, many of these startups, or many of the unicorns that have started to arise, they started to look into what we call it as the frugal opportunities, or frugal innovative opportunities, what we call it as the jugaad. So to give you an example, which I'll also be sharing the same slide in the end, is Estonia. Estonia is one country which has been referred to as one of the most technologically advanced nations, although the population is very, very tiny. But this small, tiny little country in the Europe has created such an impact in digitalization that everybody are now looking into that. The reason is pretty simple. Okay, to give you a simple example, if I'm a person who has a business in India, and I would like to scale up an opportunity to Europe, I have Estonia's e-residency program. Okay, so this e-residency program actually helps me to start my business completely online, just using my laptop, without even stepping inside European Union or European soil. So how did this happen? So Estonia came out with these kind of strategies. They said that, okay, we have enough infrastructure, we have all digitalized, interconnected systems and processes. Why don't we come up with some interesting business models? So if I have to do business, let's say, for example, if I have to sell something from India to France, okay, and if the French businessman or the French consignment has to pay me some sort of money, or some sort of compensation for what I did, there would be higher amount of transaction cost that is going to occur. So in order to reduce this higher amount of transaction cost, both for the receiver and for the sender, okay, so Estonia decided that, why don't we create something called as a virtual offices for these people. So my office will have a branch office virtually located in Estonia, and through Estonia, the person who is supposed to pay me can actually route it through Estonia, and through Estonia I can receive it in India, which reduces a lot of, significantly reduces cost. So these things, what happens is, gives you opportunities, okay, and makes you more, vulnerable to different, equations. And these things actually give, smaller enterprises the edge to, scale up. So digital infrastructure and digital globalization started to give more opportunities to startups, and started to give more opportunities to, for this small businesses. So small businesses actually started to, take more advantage of this digital globalization because of the, instant access to internet, instant access to, e-commerce platforms, instant access to consultants. For example, many of the startups, in different countries, what they're planning to do is, they hire people in, online. So for instance, many of the software companies or other things which are there, which are existing. So what they would probably do is, they would try to hire people from Fiverr or from Upwork. The cost of hiring labor has also reduced. And thanks to digital globalization, these digital globalization have started to give, more opportunities to people, like smaller countries or even for emerging economies. So emerging economies started to play more role in terms of digital globalization. So just to give you a small insight, this is what digital globalization basically looks like. And now going back more further. So one of the reasons why the digital globalization started to become more popular in the last few years is that, many of these physical archives that you see in the images have started to turn into digital archives. So you would see that every student now is equipped with a laptop or a mobile phone or a tablet. Okay. And also you have many number of users, so according to some of the researchers, what they call this era is the era of digital diet. Okay. So the meaning is, we consume more than food, more than other resources, we consume social media, we consume technology. Okay. So, I mean, all of us now, at least since morning, you've been sitting in the conference or we've been talking, we've been discussing, there would be some, situations where we have to be glued, we have to be connected to internet. We have to be using technology. We have to be using our mobile phones. We have to open up laptops, or we have to make some sort of payments using mobile phones, or we have to circulate some of the information. We need to tag people. So we need to tweet. We need to, use Facebook. So some or the other way, during our everyday routines, we are actually glued or connected to many of these devices, technological platforms, or even social media, devices or platforms. So as you can see, in one of these diagrams, initially when the population also started growing, it used to take a lot many years to reach to the first 50 million users or first 50 million customers. But now, in a country like India, every month, there are millions of mobile phones that are sold. So you can see, the pace of change that has happened in the last 10 to 15 years. So many of these physical archives are becoming digital archives, and many of these connectivities are becoming very, very mobile. So you can even make payments on mobile now. You can receive everything. You can trade everything online. So things have started to change. So, this is one of the reasons why it is now very easy and free for us, just using Facebook, just using Twitter, or even using YouTube. We can create contents, we can connect with people across the globe, and we can still do a lot of business. So that is why the concept or the phenomena of digital globalization is something that gives powers for us, where we only use technology as a platform to make business, to connect with people, to engage in some sort of a social cause, or even you can do many other things. Just to give you another example, crowdfunding. So all of you might be very aware of this, sometimes startups, sometimes people, when they are in need of some kind of capitals, they usually go online. Okay, so gofundme.com, or there are many other websites where you can actually talk about your intentions, talk about your motivations to start a business, or even if you want to write a book, there is everything that is available online right now. So how this pace of change started to happen, because there are, just moving on, you would see in this particular diagram, see, the digital globalization basically started to give more opportunities for the sharing economy cycle. All right. So just to give you a simple example, I was talking to you about the crowdfunding, for entrepreneurs or for any people who are looking for some capital. Even there are some general public who want to conduct or create some kind of social cause or work on sustainability. So they need fundings. So rather than asking from a funding agency, why don't we start a crowdfunding? Why don't we use a platform? So the sharing economy life cycle started to engage, started to become more popular. Okay. So number one, freelancing sites. Okay. So you must be very familiar with Fiverr and Upwork websites, where, many of the freelancers, or even freelancing.com, all those websites where people try to engage in trying to find some sort of an appointment on a part-time basis, or some people actually do, a full-time jobs using these platforms. Okay. However, they have their own divisions, they have divided their own structures. So the freelancing thing, one of the most interesting business model that actually started to come out of this digital globalization is freelancing. For example, sitting in Bangalore, sitting online, you can actually take tuitions on economics for a student sitting in Latin America or for a student sitting in Asia. Or you would like to talk about the culture, you would like to talk about, on social analytics or business analytics. It is because of these freelancing websites where you have the ability to teach your own and work on your own niche and create an opportunity for yourself. Now, similarly, car sharing. So Uber is not, something that is unknown for us. And there are many other platforms which is not, Rapido, it is not something unknown for us. So car sharing. So sometimes people can still use applications, people can still share informations. Every information or data that is exchanged within these, platforms gets recorded. And it is easy for people to engage in terms of doing business or in terms of referring or also in terms of creating opportunities. Couchsurfing, one of the platforms where people try to invite strangers, okay, who are looking to crash at someone's place. And secondhand markets, quicker, OLX, or you have in US something called as the Craigslist, and in France we have something called as the Le Bon Coin. All those things they started to appear because we slowly started to move towards what is called as the sharing economy. So digital globalization, when it started happening, it not only gave opportunities within the country, but it also started giving opportunities outside the country. That means you can still expand your business, beyond your boundaries, not just within India, but also you can have clients from US, clients from Cambodia, or even clients from Japan. Okay, it all depends how you want to do. And for everything, the digital or the technological platforms started to give opportunities. So some businesses, as you can see in this figure, could be niche and some could be very breakthrough. For instance, Airbnb, is considered as one of the breakthrough businesses that actually started renting out services to people in terms of private rentals rather than the hotels. And you also have B&B hostels, you have book rentals, everything. Slowly things started to increase or evolve over a period of time. So you can take example of Netflix, which was a DVD rental company, and now they have their own production house, they have entertainment services, they are streaming online, so whatnot. They are into variety of businesses. So digital globalization, okay, so the term digital here is very, very critical because that is where opportunities started to arise. So moving on, so how this digital globalization is also helping for technology and science and beyond businesses. Okay, so I took some instances from news articles to just to show you all of you that thanks to the development of technology, thanks to the digital globalization, for example, let me try to give you a simple example. Now imagine if you are in one of the war prone countries in somewhere in Africa or somewhere in the Middle East. Now there are times, there are events or situations when a doctor even cannot enter a war zone. It is so difficult. Okay, and there would be some in-house doctors located in those countries who need more help, or who want certain doctors to perform some surgeries, or who want certain doctors to help them in assisting in some surgeries, etc., etc. So technology started to evolve in such a way that this digital technologies even started to reach out of out of their boundaries. That this is one example of digital globalization. So as you can see in these pictures, there are some surgeons who cannot go to one place to the other, or sometimes, there are some doctors who cannot actually perform surgeries visiting to a war-prone zone or visiting to a conflict region. So what would you like to do at these kind of times? So many countries or many nations, what they're now trying to do is they're trying to install what is called as the mobile hospitals or technology driven hospitals, or hospitals driven with robots and other technological tools. Okay, so people even without visiting to the doctor can actually get surgeries now. But of course, the question of feasibility, the question of scalability, and the question of safety and security all matters. But if you have someone administered, who are present within your vicinity, and then if a doctor can perform far away from 600 to 1000 kilometers away, who can still use his robotic hands sitting with motion sensors, and again he or she can perform surgeries, why not? Okay, so sometimes we would be stuck in some situations where only technology can somehow somehow help us, if not completely. So these are some of the simple examples, how globalization has started to come. And this is one reasons why.
Sorry to
So,
interrupt, sir.
yes.
So your slides are not moving. They are not going to another slide. It's stuck.
Okay, I'm just trying to, is it visible now?
Just a moment, sir. Yeah, so it
I
is
can see
Newsweek. So just change the other slide. Just
it's
see whether.
it's fine now. Are you able to see now? I'm like
So
moving
I'm only
around.
able to see one slide, that is Newsweek.
Okay, let me
Yeah,
just okay, let me just share again. Sorry for
yeah,
that. I don't know what.
it's okay, sir.
Yeah, it should be okay now. You can see the news week. Is that?
Newsweek, yeah, Newsweek.
Can you see? I'm going back
Yeah,
now.
now digital
Yes.
globalization.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sure. Thanks for the prompt. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as I was explaining to all of you, this is one of the examples that I wanted to share because how digital globalization can actually help in medical science or medical fields. You would see that people can still perform surgeries or people can still perform medical procedures or treatments, even staying far. So I try to take this news clippings just to give you an example of how technology is trying to be developed in future. And believe me, in future there would be a time when surgeries could still happen even without human assistance. Only robots can actually perform surgeries. So the days are not far. In the near future, you would or we would probably like to experience or see how these things could happen. So please let me know if you can see my next slide. I think it should be visible to all of you. Is it fine?
Yeah, yes, sir. So it is visible.
All right, thank you so much. So just to give you another example of how digital globalization is changing, I have some of my friends, who are living in Korea, and some of them are also in Hong Kong. Many of these countries now started to have different kinds of trends, where you have restaurants without waiters, restaurants without managers, and online restaurants. So I tried to take some simple examples from news clippings to just to show you the how the restaurant industry would also change with the help of digital globalization. Okay, now thanks to YouTube and thanks to other technological platforms, there are many other online tools where you can actually learn, you can actually franchise, okay, and run a restaurant in your own country, in your own place. Okay, now all these things is happening because of digital globalization. Earlier it used to be so difficult for us to get some recipes. We had to buy this big book for us and then read through it and then perform. But now, thanks to YouTube and thanks to other technological platforms, where you get the opportunity to actually look into it, okay, and experience how it is done and actually perform the same in your own place. And restaurant businesses are changing. You can see many restaurants started to open even completely online, okay, where you just have to go and use the touch screens and order your food, sit there, put it in a basket of put it in a waste basket, and then just step out from there. So things have started to become more organized in terms of technology. Take example of Amazon. In US, some of my colleagues have told me that there are Amazon shops where you don't need a person to even scan your food. You just have to go with the RFID technologies, keep scanning all over and just buy it off. So these kind of things actually help consumers to reduce time, to make it more convenient, and also to choose variety of options. Okay, and many universities, I have also seen in one of the universities in France where there is a robotic coffee machine. I mean, you don't need a coffee person to make a coffee for you. There is a robotic coffee machine that actually makes coffee for you and delivers to you. Okay, so there is a nice YouTube documentary on that. All of you can look into it. So this when we consider how digital globalization is changing, this is one simple examples in a regional context. Okay, and on the left hand side you can also see how technology is going to come in future. I mean, of course, when we talk about digital globalization, we should also think of something what we call it as the artificial intelligence. Okay, so in future you may have some passenger planes or even some airplanes flying without even pilots. Okay, so there are some trial running happening in Europe as well as in the US, just to see and understand, is it possible to fly a plane even without pilots? Now imagine if you're a owner of a a company, of a passenger plane company, and often if you feel that, okay, my my staffs are going on a strike, and it is causing a lot of issues. So no, there might be a day in future you might even think of, okay, let me have some robots running the flights. But of course, nobody would want to sit in a flight without a pilot. Okay, so that is some sort of a psychological problem that we might actually see. But you never know. Okay, when people have started to go on rockets and visit space, without anything. So I think this should also be possible. Okay, so the reason why I'm trying to tell you all these things is because you see how technologies are changing. You see how the lifestyle is changing. Now Sony and Samsung have also come up with the world's smallest or tiniest lens, and these lens, when you put in your eyes, can actually record, can actually take pictures, and it will send it to cloud. So things have started to become so tiny, so smaller. And also these kind of things actually give more opportunities. The reason why all these things are happening is because of the digital infrastructure and the digital opportunities that has been created. So exchange of knowledge, exchange of culture, exchange of ideas that started to happen through these platforms gave more and more importance to people to innovate and come with interesting business models. So similarly, moving on, you will see, this is what I wanted to actually talk to you about, and I'll probably take some minutes to explain this. So if you get some time, I would request all of you to please look into Estonia. And Estonia is one country where most of the activities has been made completely online. So imagine that on Monday you would like to vote for Republicans, and you have 5 days to decide whether you want to close the vote. And on Friday you change your mind and you say that, okay, I would like to vote for other parties. So from Republicans you can go to others and then vote it and then close it off. So you can actually cast your vote from anywhere, or using internet and using a connected device. So, voting is online in Estonia, and e-policing is there. Police can actually check all your records completely online. So there are cameras set up everywhere. The technology is such at par that, everything can be accessed, just in a dashboard for them. E-taxing, every taxation, of course, we also have in our country, but the kind of, approvals and digital signatures that are required in Estonia is completely different. So that is also still possible. And one of the things I was telling you earlier is the e-residency program, where you can actually start your business completely online, just using a laptop from your own house, is only with Estonia. That means you'll have a virtual office in Estonia, you'll have your VAT number, you'll also have a bank account, everything legally recorded with this one small tiny little card that you'll get, telling that you are a business registration holder in the European Union. Even though you don't want to visit, you never want to visit, it's still fine, but everything can be managed by the government. So this is the opportunity given by the government. Now, this is what I tell, the most important, the crux of a digital globalization. So because of globalization, of course, in the beginning, many boundaries started to open, but digital globalization is giving you much more opportunity. That means you can actually start your business completely online in a different country's soil, even without visiting there. So this is the power of technology, and this is how the idea of Estonia, or Estonia's e-residency program, actually came up. So if you have a business, you want to scale up your business, and maybe you want to experiment with your business, just go for Estonia's e-residency. Why don't you try? There is no harm in trying. As a group of entrepreneurs, you can actually see whether you can scale up your business to Europe. Why not? All right. So this is one interesting example of what digital globalization can actually offer to people. Like, for example, it can actually empower a person like you and me to reach out to different nations, to reach out to different markets, to create some kind of new consumer base in different countries. Okay, so this is one example. However, when we talk about digitalization or digital globalization, one of the things that started to emerge in the last few years, along with this, is the personal data industry or the data brokerage industry. Okay, now just to give you some examples, now every time every conversation that we do online, everything that we have done it completely online, there is some amount of content that is getting created, and during this content creation there are many interesting pieces of data that every researcher wants to know, or every business person wants to know. Okay. Now, Axiom is one of the biggest data brokerage company that is located in US, and their only job is to mine the data. Okay. Now, just to give you an example, how data mining happens in the world of digital globalization is this one. This simple example can actually give you, a complete analysis of, how things are going to change in future. Okay. Now, you can see here approximately an individual's profile can be done. Again, it is because of digital globalization, it is because of exchange of information, flow of data and information created this opportunity, to get into the data business or the data mining business. So if an individual is there, his age, gender, education, employment, political views, the number of children, the purchases, his interest, okay, his health issues, the vehicles that he likes or she likes, or the properties that he owns, how much of a credit score he has, what has been his history, what is his socio-economic status, what is his political views, religious views, etc., etc., etc. Now imagine all these things can be taken from one individual. Now imagine if lakhs of individual within the cluster of Bangalore, or crores of individual within the cluster of Bangalore, if a company can mine their data, targeting marketing campaigns, targeting ads, targeting some revenue models could be easier. So because of digital globalization, the data mining or the data industry started to appear. So imagine if I want to understand, if I'm a pharmaceutical company, and I have manufactured an important drug, for people to treat with some kind of mental diseases. I would like to see how is the market, how many people are having, mental breakdowns, how many people actually are following, these mental wellness programs in particular region. And based on that, I can target my market. So this is something that, the trend that is happening after the digital globalization started to appear. Okay, so the data business or the data mining business, or what we call it as the data as the new oil, this is how every individual's data get mined. Okay, it also tells you, whether he's a frequent Facebook user, whether he's a, Instagram user, or whether he likes any other things, etc., etc. Now, for example, if you install Candy Crush or any other programming, any other gaming programming applications on your mobile phone, eventually what happens is we do not have the time to read the terms and conditions, which is, way long, too much for us to understand. But we simply click on accept and we do it. But in that, we tend to forget that, we are actually giving some sort of a powers to the company. So there is one gaming application which I don't want to mention, since this is public and online. So this gaming industry, actually, when you install it, it can actually spy and check, what are the number of other applications that you have within your mobile, and it can actually target your ad making things, or it might try to hijack and sort of control you by giving you some opportunities and offers. So this is how every company does, because they want their consumers, their customers, to be happy and glued to their own application and do not get into the other competitive applications. So these are the things that usually happen. Okay. Now, moving on, another example that I would like to give you is, how Netflix started using data. Again, thanks to digital globalization, because of technology, because of access, Netflix simply created the House of Cards purely based on data science and nothing else. Okay. They had absolutely no idea, how should we actually bring in what sort of people or what sort of actors we should bring in. So there is an interesting article online, I don't mind sharing with you, all of you, later you can actually take a look, that, how Netflix actually used data science to create, a content or a television series. Okay. So Netflix tried to understand the different users. The moment we are subscribers, there is some or the other way Netflix actually knows the kind of searches we do, the kind of movies we watch, based on this kind of subscriptions, these are the kind of movie genres that we've been watching. So they started to classify different sort of clusters in US, and then they understood that, okay, using data science, they were able to purely understand that people would like to see Kevin Spacey in more of a dramatic role, okay, and Robin Wright in more of a dramatic or a supporting role. So using data science, when they categorize these kind of interests, that this is what people like to see. Okay, there are 5 million people who would like to see drama, and based on drama, they would like to see Kevin Spacey as their as their most preferred actor. That is how these kind of things started to become success. So digital globalization has given opportunity for data science And data science has been used by companies to create not only just contents, but also produce movies like this, okay, or television series like this. So that is why data is very important. That is the reason why I told you, this particular data of an individual is a gold mine in today's business. Okay. So gone are the days of any other business. But if you have all this business, you can still get something like this done, and you can actually be more powerful and successful by producing such movies or television series. Along with this, one of the new business model that has started to appear or have changed is, turning the data into insights. So all these companies that you see on the right hand side basically work on turning your data into insights. So these are some of the companies that actually help you in marketing campaigns. Thanks to digital globalization, people sitting in the United States will know, how he can target to get some of their online consumers in a developing economy markets. Okay. So how many consumers actually like this kind of a hashtag? How many consumers actually in India follow these kind of celebrities in the US? So what are the statements my US celebrities have to say in order to appeal the consumers in Asian market, etc., etc., etc. So social media, there is a website called reputation.com. Okay. That means there are some companies who actually are now trying to come out and help you to maintain your reputation in an online environment. Okay. So digital globalization, once it started giving rise to this, this data economy or the data science that started to take over all over the world, it also gave new business opportunities and, kind of models for these companies to come with social media insights, because it is pretty easy for us to complain and take out our frustration, tag Amazon. I mean, if you have any of your deliveries that is getting delayed, if you have anything that you would like to see, we actually go on social media, we actually go on the e-commerce website and try to write every of our frustration. Even if we are happy, we try to write all great and good things about this product or services that we had. So all these data, all these data are now managed by, social media insights company. For example, how do I change my pricing? They go to social media, they see what is the pulse of the consumers. Okay, which consumer I should target for my next marketing campaign? What is the age group I should target? How many people are more into, these kind of segments, these kind of context, which products are more preferred by consumers? What is their sustainability value? Do they like products to be more sustainable or more ecological, etc., etc.? So companies start to use these kind of small things, because ultimately when a product is produced, it actually should reach the end consumer. So that's what everybody does. Okay. And these small companies are now started to emerge, and this has also started to give opportunities for many, scholars to get into these kind of businesses, to understand, how social media insights can actually help, companies to gain more followers, companies to gain more economic advantage, and how companies can actually be connected. Sometimes you would be connected on Instagram, sometimes you like some post on Twitter, or sometimes you tag, your experience with Twitter, etc. So this is what companies are also trying to do now. Just to give you another example of how digitalization and data insights have reached to agriculture is in terms of CropX. Technology is now trying to help. If I'm a farmer and if I'm sitting at my home, and if I want to see based on the weather forecast, what are the things that I need to do, or what are the crops that I can actually grow in my land, everything, every insights are now given by companies. Okay. So one simple example is CropX, where, it's a software system which actually helps you to measure your soil moisture, and also helps you to understand, what are the types of crops you can actually grow based on the soil's moisture and the soil fertility, etc., etc. Okay. And on the other hand, you can see one of the companies called Lele, which actually has developed technological tools to measure the health of your cow. Okay. So, what are the types of foods that I need to feed my cow? How's the health of my cow, or how many, amount of milk that can be extracted, etc., etc. What is their requirement in the next couple of weeks? What sort of food I need to feed them, grass fed or what else, etc., etc. So technology is also trying to give even farmers and also other people working in the agricultural technology to have these kinds of better insights. So this would actually give people more power and understanding to make sure that their business is on track, and technology is actually helping them to do so. Okay, so that's why these examples are basically meant with technology to make you more equipped. So you don't have to invite a geologist to come and measure your soil fertility or soil moisture or give you some geological report. So technology is trying to give technology is trying to equip. So based on a dashboard on your laptop, you can control, when to have this sprinkler irrigation, when to stop it, how to stop it. Everything is completely done on by now. While I talk about data, data in future will start giving you powers. Okay, so since we're talking about digital globalization, now data, how it is going to give you power. Now, these are the companies on the right hand side that you see are basically called as the digital wallets. Now, imagine you visit, hotel, let's say you visit Leela Hotel, okay, the Leela Palace, and you stay there for 2 days. And at the end of your stay, one of the concierge executive comes and asks you or gives you an online link stating that, please rate your experience from 1 to 5 based on the following questions. And what you do, just to, keep their sanctity, what we do is we try to say sometimes no, or we sometimes say yes, and we actually, fill it up. And most of the times, we fill it in a better way, or sometimes we fill it, just like inky pinky, something like that. So usually what happens when these kind of data are given, these data are also becoming very crucial. So some of the companies, some of the institutions, what they're now thinking is, why don't we make or give powers to consumers that, when you give any data, imagine that you stayed 2 days for, 2 days, 2 days in the Leela Palace, and you wanted to actually, give some sort of feedback. The feedback that is taken from you will be monetized or will be compensated in terms of digital currency. So any data that you want to give tomorrow, let's say you go to, booking.com and you stayed in a hotel, you want to give it, everything should be compensated. So that means some institutions and organizations are thinking that, we should actually give more powers to consumer, and the consumer also should be rewarded for the data that they're giving, because now data is everything. That is why I'm telling you, data is going to be one of the biggest talks in the future. So data security, of course, when we talk about data, digital globalization, safety and security issues actually matter. And that's one of the reasons, we should also be a bit careful about. And hackers, company stealings, identity theft, etc., is happening. So safety and security is going to be one of the biggest businesses, okay, in the platform of digital globalization, in the world. And most of these businesses are now depending on countries like Korea, Israel, Estonia, US, China, and other countries, because these countries are now coming out as the emerging digital security, countries. And digital security business is going to boom again, and it is estimated to be $1 billion business by 2040. And you can see, I mean, I'm sure we all agree with this fact that, because, when we have too much of data, when we have too much of content created every day, so the security of those contents, the security of these data is also very important. Sorry. So just to give you one small example of, how these things are happening is because, hackers all over the globe are waiting for you to attack, in small things that you do. So when we are trying to do business, when we are trying to have some kind of digital globalization opportunity extracted, we should also be careful about, not to overload or not to get into some, conspiracies or conflicts, which actually creates or provokes other people to get into the business and, take out of our, more core values. So Sony once had to pay, over 8 million because, they produced a movie called The Interview, which was mocking one of the North Korean leader. And because of this, they had to kind of, lose some amount of money. Okay. So although we do this, but again, you can actually attack a country even without weapons. There is an example of, Stuxnet. I would suggest everyone to look into it. Stuxnet was a small malware that was created by US and is really intelligent, and which actually destroyed one of the nuclear reactors in Iran. Okay, so you don't even need a weapon, you just need a small, tiny little malware that is created in a program, and it can actually destroy many of the things. So what is happening lately due to the digital globalization? Resilience, online shopping, and robot deliveries. You're going to see these things very common in future. Okay. Digital and contactless payments, this is going to be the future. Of course, we all have started to witness about it. Okay. And many of these interesting things will start taking over. Many new fintech companies are going to come out, many new ways of making payments and many new ways of receiving payments, even from abroad, has also started to come up. For example, one better example is Wirex. Okay. Remote work is going to be completely normal. As you can see, I'm working remotely, while I was supposed to be in France, I'm working remotely. And then This remote work is going to be a new normal, and this is again, part and parcel of the digital globalization that I said. So you can actually take sessions, you can actually work with researchers across the world, thanks to digital globalization again. And the future of work on using AI and automation, of course, we'll have to keep in our mind that if digital globalization is taking over like a storm, what are those jobs that are going to be affected, and what are those jobs that would actually stay in place, and what are those jobs that would still not be affected by data or still not be affected by digitalization, especially construction workers, electrical workers, school teachers, consultants, social workers, and then hairdressers, etc. These are few examples where these people will not be much affected by the technology. Of course, they can use certain technologies to scale up their business, but their profession, but their skill would not be affected in future. So this is one simple example for you all to understand, how the technology could actually be more, concerned for some businesses and concerned for some professions and not for others. So similarly, the characteristics of digital globalization, in my opinion, the reason why the digital globalization started to take over is because companies are very obsessed with the customers. They are very distinctively inspired. That means, they gain more of, inspiration through many other things. They're very innovative. You can see a lot of innovative companies coming out, many innovative products and services coming out. And some companies are very, very pragmatic. They try to be more open. They try to be more practical, and they try to communicate very openly, because this is the time where people or the companies cannot fake, and everything is recorded, everything is documented. And these are the reasons why the digital globalization started to kickstart. And I think in future, if you take example of Estonia, or if you take example of many other countries where online systems are developing, and online courses, online examinations, everything is becoming more of more online. So it is because of these four important pillars, in my opinion, I feel the digital globalization has taken far more beyond. So lastly, I would like to leave with some questions to all of you to reflect upon. So although we've spoken a lot about technology, digital infrastructure, and connectivity, etc. So all of us have mobile phone, all of us have tablets, all of us have computers. There are many digital devices like projectors and systems or monitors, etc. that are developed. But somewhere deep down the line, we should also think that since the theme of this conference is about sustainability, so I felt these are important things to address. So on the left hand side, you see the coltan, the conflict mineral that is abundantly available in few of the countries, and also mostly in Republic of Congo. So any of the mobile phones that is manufactured, any of the laptop that gets manufactured, or computers that get manufactured, they need these minerals. Okay, and just next to that slide, you see the copper mining in Panama City, where you see the white patches. This is all copper mines. And to the extreme right, you see Chile, where the lithium batteries, lithium batteries are very popular for mobile phones, for for laptops, and also for camera batteries. So lithium extraction that is happening in Chile, where the water lake is being extracted to take out lithium. And also about a small young school going kid in Republic of Congo who is getting lack of access to education because he's been asked to mine in the fields just to extract coltan, or to find gold, or to find any other minerals that can actually help to develop a computer or to a laptop. So we see a lot of beauty in the products that we use. We see a lot of aesthetics when we talk online, when we when we have this facility of looking each other in an online environment, and thanks to digitalization. But there is also a dark side behind it, where the forest or the ecosystem is getting destroyed, where people are getting lack of access to education, and many of the popular lakes are getting dried up, and still and many of the landscapes are getting cut down, and many of the trees are going off, because we need minerals are most important, that actually make up to many of the digital infrastructure that we provide. Okay, so this leads me to a question that what about the human rights when we talk about digitalization or globalization? What about sustainable alternatives? How do we find the recycling? How do we mobilize companies to be more responsible towards the environment? How do we create an awareness? How do we educate people? And what are the actions we can take in terms of digital globalization? Although we see a lot of convenience with us, although we see we have different mobile phones and all other comforts that we have just to sit and speak and sit and start the companies, but Every of these devices that get manufactured, there is a dark story behind it, someone's blood, someone's sweat, a drying lake story or a cut down tree story is there somewhere behind any of these mobiles and computer phones. So I believe these questions are very important for us to reflect in the wake of digital globalization, because it is giving us a lot of opportunities, but I think we also have some sense of responsibilities to take it forward. So with this, I finish my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and and over to the organizers if they have any questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Amitabh Anand. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights with us on freelancing, social analytics, frugal innovation, digital globalization, turning data into analytics, data science, and many more. It was really interesting to know how you reiterated the point that data is the new oil and how we need to protect it is a big challenge. Thank you for suggesting the ways to protect it even. Also letting us know the questions we need to reflect, keeping the sustainable development in mind. Your session was indeed a powerhouse of information. Thank you so much, sir, for your precious time. It really means a lot. Thank you for being there.
Thank you. If
Yes,
there are any questions, I'll be happy
we have
to
a
answer.
question. We have a question actually. One second.
Sure.
Dr. Anand, there are a few questions out here, so I'm just giving it to the first person.
Sure.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Okay, sir, we will take a few questions.
Yeah.
Sure.
First of all, I would like to thank you for providing a very thought-provoking session on digital globalization. So we got to know that data is gaining the much importance nowadays. So the question is, so what is the thing is, what about data reliability, data quality, and standardization aspects?
That's a very, very important and interesting question. I don't know what's your name. Thanks for asking. See, data reliability, I'll tell you, data reliability, data transparency, data repeatability, and data reproducibility. So this is the policy document I believe is going to get ready by the government of India in future. And one of these document is also getting ready in the European Union. Okay, now you asked a very important question, because the data is abundantly available. Whether this data is reliable, whether this data is reproducible, or whether can I make sure that this data is relevant to my context, is something everybody, including me, every researchers in the world are trying to understand. So the question of reliability becomes questionable because of the sources. So the government and the institutions' responsibility is to give you the sources, the trusted sources where the data can be relied upon. Okay, if you get any data from non-trustable sources, you'll have to verify it by your own experiments and engagements. But if you want to talk about data reliability, data reproducibility, and also the transparency, I believe the most important thing is the source. Okay, so verified sources, verified agencies and verified institutions will be able to offer you the data reliability. For instance, in our research, when we want data reliability, we have certain databases and we have certain agencies where once we get these data from them, it is blindfolded for us to simply believe and take it. Okay, so this is the kind of reliability or the kind of institutions and the policy that needs to be created by the government. Like, this is where the source of data is reliable and relevant. And this is where the source of data needs to be checked, cross-verified, or experimented, things like this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Sir, here transactions are taking place between the countries, digital transactions. In case of financial transactions, what is about the exchange rate determination, the currency in exchange, currency in trade?
See, the currency exchange and rate determination, there is a regulatory body everywhere. Every country has the regulatory body, and this regulatory body determines the fact that what we call in economics as the the demand or the supply need. So I really don't know how I would be able to answer this question, because the financial transaction and digital globalization currency exchanges actually can give you opportunities. You can actually trade different currencies of different countries just using your mobile phone right now. All right. And accordingly, I believe, the transaction rates are not in any of our controls. Okay, so the transaction rates are determined by the regulatory bodies or the agencies of respective institutions. For example, you can see now the reason why dollar is trying to pick up. It is because of the supply of oil, and it's because of the war. One nation is actually profiting out of this. Okay, and once the investments, once the inflow of cash, once the inflow of resources goes to one particular country, their currency value actually shoots up. So this is one of the reasons why you would see the dollar gaining incremental value, and for example, euro is now going down. Even pounds is significantly going down. The very simple reason is in Europe there is an energy crisis. The energy prices have shooted up to 100 to 150%. So you can imagine the kind of amount to be spent and reserved for energy conservation now. So government would obviously cut down in different parts, and that is why, and that is when the impact happens, and that is when the currency actually fluctuates. So this could be one of the reasons.
Thank you so much.
There is one question from one of the attendee. He asks, how does digitalization and automation affect the GDP, since automation is going to cause unemployment?
Well, see, this question is actually very contestable. Let's not confuse with what is automation and digitalization. Okay, see, automation is you only automate a process. Okay, so there is a process from A to B. For example, take automobile industries. So earlier automobile industries used to have the assembly unit plants where people used to work and assemble it. So right now you have robots. That particular process has been automized. So due to that automation, many of the jobs obviously went across. However, digital globalization is also giving empowerment to other people. So we cannot really say that automation will have any direct impact on the GDP because of the unemployment or because it is not giving opportunities. In fact, we should be thankful to digital globalization. It is giving enough opportunities. I mean, as I told you, the example of Estonia, how many of you knew that you can actually sit and start a company in Europe right now? It's actually cost you only $350 to start a company there. Okay, so things like that. So one way, of course, automation has to happen, because if I'm a company, if I'm investing every year $100,000 for my assembly unit, and if I know that okay, I can reduce this $100,000 to only $50,000. Okay, so obviously as a company, I would not think of the employment part, but I would like to think about my operational cost reduction part. So when it comes to operational part reduction and other process reduction, it will definitely not have any impact on the GDP. Okay, impact on GDP arises only when there is less of opportunities for people, there is less of opportunities for entrepreneurs, and less of opportunities to make business beyond the borders. So it is because of globalization we have to be thankful that our GDP is slowly growing well and well. So I would say that your question is very interesting and very contestable, and there is no specific or definitive answers for it. And my strong belief is that it will definitely not impact GDP.
Thank you so much, sir, for your patience and for taking up the question at the last hour. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank
Sachin,
you.
sir, any other inputs from you? Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much again. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.